I was always impressed when I had read back in the day that you had written Tell the World My Name, or at least a lot of it, while you were incarcerated. So what made you back in the 80s realize that you should or could or needed to do that?
Me and DMX was locked up together, and we had this thing where we had took out everybody in the prison system. We had beat everybody. And he was the upstart coming into Long Island, where I was from. And everybody was like, this is going to be one of the biggest battles in history. And we battled. The only thing that kind of bothered me with X was the only guy I wasn't able to pick apart because I was so smart. DMX would use deceit to win the fight. In other words, when I saw DMX in front of 4,000 people crying, I knew I didn't have a chance with him, because I wasn't going to do that. Like, I wasn't going to gas people up to feel sorry for me and then have great art for them to fall in love with too. He was a genius in that way because he stopped my onslaught. He stopped my attack, because you can't attack a person that got people feeling sorry for him. He was a genius when he stood in front of millions of people. And I looked at Jay-Z and I said, how are you going to deal with this? Because Jay-Z was closing, and I was like, how are you going to deal with this? Like, I knew it was an exit strategy for me to go, okay, this is over, because how do you attack? So even if you would have won the physical fight, because he's not a fighter, okay, but how would people felt about you if you'd have hurt him and they felt sorry for you? Yeah. I knew that was the exit strategy for me right there. I knew when he got in front of the people and cried, it was like him doing the group home, and they said, you can't have a crumb cake. And he cried, and the lady felt sorry, and she gave it to him. He used that to magnify his ability to, and then the way he took Def Jam over from all those artists at Def Jam, he made people feel sorry for him. And it worked. And then Def Jam folded too. Eventually it folded. It's like you couldn't have that much negativity in the house and it not fold. Which I knew it was going to happen. I would tell everybody, I was like, nah, this shit's not going to, there's no way it could last up with that kind of negativity going through there. I knew it. And it folded.
Well, people forget too, to your point, that DMX was by a lot the most popular best-selling artist there. Like, it wasn't even close.
Well, yeah, because you got to remember, he's the first time in history you had a crackhead who can come in here, do his art. His father was an artist too. We have to give credit to his dad. His dad was a great artist. Didn't have it together the other way, like neither did DMX. It's very much like his dad. Great artist, but everything else was messed up. And when he did this group home thing, you couldn't compete with him. Yeah. And I knew how great I was, because I did write Spellbound the way he used it though. Because you got to remember, DMX was winning the battle till I broke Spellbound out. And then the room temperature changed for him. So he's never experienced that. And then they told him, Kev will kick your ass too. You don't just rap, he can kick your ass too. What's up? So it was like he had a real situation with me where I didn't really want to do that with him. I liked him. I wanted to work with him. One of my Carhartts told him, he said, yeah, and he'll kick your ass too. And that put us in a situation where we were never friends, because now he was, you got to remember, he was more fearful of me than, because I was like royalty in Long Island in hip hop. I've been rhyming since a baby. Never lost a battle, always, and X never lost a battle neither till he ran into me, and he lost that battle in jail. And he lost that one with Jay-Z too. I had friends there on that ground too. But to his credit, he will never admit it. He's the Joe Frazier of, like, I'm the Muhammad Ali, and he's the Joe Frazier all day. It's just, we never got a chance to mix it up, and it just wasn't going to happen, because he knew he couldn't physically stand up to me, and he would make it so I couldn't, by the placing the pieces he put in his, like the Rough Riders, they weren't his friends. They were people that ran into him, and they all used each other to make this collage. There was no bike gang. That was a bunch of guys doing tricks, making it look like it was. You know what I'm saying? It was like Mike Tyson coming in the ring, the old Mike Tyson coming in the ring, and the Bruce Selton fight. That's what that was. And Mike Tyson knows, like, if he would have fought anybody else but Bruce Sutton that night, he probably would have got his ass kicked, because if you're fighting somebody that really knows what's on the line, like Buster Douglas knew, you're going to have a problem if you're not your 100%.
Yeah, people always forget you really need to be ready if somebody else, you got to know your opponent.
Don't get me wrong. You could come like he did with Bruce Sutton. Like I would have walked out of Bruce Sutton's corner because I knew Bruce Sutton lost the fight the minute, because I'm a fighter. The minute I seen Bruce Sutton look up at the skylight and shake, I knew it was over. From that point, I knew when Mike Tyson had him, because he didn't know he was as tall as he was. He thought he had a chance with his jab. And when he got in front of him and he looked and he shook and looked up in the curtains and he tried to shake it off, Mike Tyson started jumping up and down knowing. He's like, yeah, I got him. So every fighter knows that part of the fight. Just like when I looked at X at the Apollo and I said, yo, come over here. And he took off. He went to go get his friends and shit, because Redman and Method Man with it. And don't get me wrong, I love X, because we were just trying to be, and I love DMX. And I'm telling you, I went to the grave when he died, put roses on the grave, and I stayed for an hour. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, I had to get up out of there. So I didn't get locked up. But I did spend time with him and I talked. And I left it there on the gravesite, you know what I'm saying? Because, and I teared up about it too, because here we were trying to be great, nothing against each other. It was just who we were to the game.
Right.
You know? And what a great opponent that I had. He was great. You know, and we were, minus the drug stuff, we were very much alike. You know, saying we were mean as rattlesnakes, and we told it like it was, you know, and I respected his story, as well as, you know, sharing that space with him in those battles. Like DMX really was that guy. You know, he just didn't have what I had. I had the other stuff too. Right. I just didn't have hip hop. I had the other stuff too. That's why when I went to Death Row, I was okay. I was like, I knew where I was going. I knew that, you know, if I could, anybody can get it, but you know when it's coming if you're one of those guys.
Yeah.
You know?
I definitely want to talk more about Death Row, but we got a lot to get to too. So when you got out and you met back up with PMD, how, given the fact that you didn't tell and there might have been whatever situation there, how did he then embrace you when there had been an issue before?
So what happened was, it was a guy that he was getting his hair cut by the name of Randy, who was cutting hair, and he said the hottest guy out here that we have is a guy by the name of K Solo. At the time when I was working with PMD, I think it was about 4 years prior, my name was KV. When I went to jail, my name had changed because they always see me by myself. A guy by the name of Gap out of Queens in Ozone Park called me K Solo. I would always be by myself. See me in Liberty Park, see me in 40 Project with my Uncle Buster. Hey, K Solo. It started sticking. So when I got locked up, that's what my name was. So when he said K Solo, Paris didn't know what he was talking about. So when I got out of jail and was getting a haircut, and the dude said, that's him right there. And when I turned around, Paris was like, I know him. And then he said, let me hear you rhyme. This guy telling me you dope. And then he heard my shit again. Prior to that, before I went to jail, I was working with Caleb Boss, and they named DJ Caleb Boss. Then when I went to jail, he became EPMD's DJ. Prior to that, I knew EPMD's bodyguard, because while I was in jail representing them wine dance dudes like Gregory Morning and Joe Myers, and they wasn't, eating all the time. I would regulate the food cart for them and make sure they eat. They would tell Alvin Toney who I was. So Alvin Toney didn't want EPMD to sign me, because streetwise, he wasn't as, with his hands like me. Alvin hit you and knock you out. But if you squared up with him, somebody that know what they're doing, they're going to neutralize it. You know what I'm saying? A person of my caliber, I was a champion going to become a pro fighter. I knew my way around that space, and he didn't want to deal with nobody like that. But we became friends. Alvin was God bless the dead. Alvin became my good friend. But I remember him telling Paris, don't sign him.
Wow.
I remember I had an issue with Freddie Fox. Freddie Fox had said some crazy stuff. And Alvin brought me to his house, and Freddie Fox was rephrasing it, saying, no, I want you to make a record about me. And I was like, nah, just don't say my name no more. So I was, very serious about being the pugilist and being at combat ready at all times. I ran 10 miles a day, and I was about it, And And I'm still like that. You know, my little brother, when I train my little brother, he's undefeated as a fighter. We retired him last year. He got his title. But, you know, my thing is this, or my culture, I never wanted to be a bully in my culture. I always wanted to be upscale like Ali, a little more educated. I wanted to be well-read and serious about the things that we had to fix. I think that people are learning today, race doesn't have a place in our heart. We find out when somebody does something wrong, we as human beings tend to gravitate to the ones that did something wrong and point them out, no matter what they look like. We're like, nah, man, foul ball. Like, we don't care. Culture's beautiful. But the humans' evolution and the way it's grown, we're starting to become the nation I'm proud to be a part of. Like, when we see something wrong, we call it. Like, we don't care that you look like us. You wrong.
Right.
We tend to go with the people that are victimized no matter what they look like. We're with them. And I like that about the way the world's going.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that, because I remember also hearing that your sisters kind of were getting on your nerves, and that's how you came up with the spellbound concept and song.
Yeah, they would spell everything, because my sisters were very educated. They would spell everything. You know, I'm telling mommy on KEVIN, and I used to be like, yo, they would just spell everything to, like, you know, well, you don't want to do nothing around them anyway. I have 4 sisters, very educated, and they know it's the fact too. It's a fact. And you know, it really became my my marquee to make me stand out. Not that I wanted to do it a lot. I just wanted to do it to get on, to show you I could do it and then get on. That was my way of getting on. X took it as it was the thing that he couldn't beat me at. Like the rhymes, he was winning that part. And then when I hit him with Spellbound and the people heard it for the first time, they laughed at it. So you couldn't imagine, remember, you know, the first time you hearing that, it was like, we're in jail. This is like in 88, 85. 88, yeah, and he hears that for the first time. He never thought, then he rewrote his. But you can tell DMX didn't author it, because the way he's rhyming, he's just spelling a whole bunch of words that.
I lost your sound, yeah.
HT.
Let's say it again. You said he was rhyming a whole bunch of words. I lost you for a second.
Then he said another MC tried to be ITE, but he went to CAUGHT. How do you go to cop? You could tell he was like the audience. His audience was a little more not well as read as us, and it's not as polished as us in the England King's Dictionary, in King's English. He was like, how do you say another MC tried to be ITE, bite, but he went to CAUGHT. I don't have to go no more. It's like, okay, that's Spellbound. That's your version, and it's okay. But I understand what he wants to do. You got to remember this too. When you're dealing with an artist like Kevin Madison, who was trained to be a fighter first, Madison Square Garden's last name. My trainers came from St. Nick's Arena, and then when Mr. Jacobs took over and brought Joe Louis and Sugar Ray Robinson over from Detroit. Then it became the Sunnyside Gardens. Then it came Madison Square Garden. So you had to go 3 hops before Madison Square Garden. My guys came from 5-on boxing team. It's like I was already, Buddy McGirt was one of my best friends. Like Junior Jones and Kevin Kelly, this was our crew. We were boxers. We were pugilists. Mike Tyson. Riddick Bowe, like we were going to be fighters. We wasn't going to rap with something that I did because I got in trouble with my hands. I'm just saying. So it puts rappers at a disadvantage with me because you couldn't hit me with a handful of rice. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I'm just saying, like a street dude coming at Buddy McGirt. I'm like, yo, pack your lunch. It's going to be a long night. He don't got the 12-inch gloves on. That's why when they told me that Mayweather got into it with T.I. and they thought these ignorant kids thought T.I. even had a shot. And I'm like, I just rubbing my head. Not that it was Mayweather. It could have been anybody.
Yeah, any boxer. Any boxer.
It would have been over. It would have been over so bad that, and not to knock T.I. It's just you're crazy if you think you had a shot. No, you wouldn't have had no shot, man. Even if you had a weapon. I seen a guy, Ralph Mann. fight a guy with a, and he was a trained boxer where I learned a lot of my shit from my best friend, Ralph Mann. Great boxer, looked like, pretty motherfucker. You didn't think he had a fight at all. The guys would walk up on him and think they had their way with him. All my childhood, I would step over people that he would knock out. I'm talking about 3 or 4 punches and the fight was over all the time. My whole childhood, it was Ralph knocking somebody out. And I never understood it till I seen a guy with a blade trying to cut him, and he put the boy in the hospital so bad that they pressed charges on Ralph. And the guy had a knife.
Wow.
So, I just, the sweet science is a problem, I know what it is. And I know how Mike Tyson gets too when I get in shit too. Mike makes it known too. Like when I got into it with my guys, Mike Tyson wasn't saying nice stuff. I just had to, calm it down because me and Mike are very close. And I was like, nah, it's all good. Because we're from a fraternity. Like I'll still go to Buddy's side if Buddy needs me. We're from a fraternity. We have each other's back to the casket.
Right.
That's just how it is.
So then how, when you, after you get out and you get with PMD, how did you, when Knick Knack Paddywhack, were you already signed to Sylvia Rhone and Atlantic, or how did that, what was the timeline of that?
So when we did Knick Knack Paddywhack, we was in Power Play Studio, and I was excited, man. And I didn't even realize we spelled bird wrong, right? So we're just having fun. We were just having fun with the energy. And it was my first time actually being a recording artist because it was something I toyed with. Didn't think I can actually do it. But here I was in this space and I was doing it. And I was like, oh, they're gonna love this. This is my time. And I started doing the Spellbound. And then it just, I got signed. And, EPMD, you gotta remember too, EPMD was at that time, even now, EPMD is still dangerous. I had a great career with EPMD. It's just that EPMD, when I figured it out, didn't understand the ramifications of stuff that Dre knew. Like when I figured it out later, because I figured it out later. In fact, recently Eric went out there to hang out with Dre. He's going to mix the album that they're doing. And then me and Scratch was like, well, man, you could have been did that. Like we were trying to get Eric to come before 30 years ago when I was out there, But, everybody has their growth period and their time when they do things. But EPMD, Eric was really a good producer. Paris was good at business with me in his ear telling him too, because I would always help Paris too. Like, all right, well, this, because I'm very educated. I'm like, no, Paris, try this. I'm older too. Paris will listen. And it got fucked up when I couldn't get in Paris's ear no more and tell him, it got crazy because and I'm doing fine doing it on my own. It just doesn't happen as fast as it would with EPMD. You got 2 6-foot guys in the room, the doors open a little faster.
Right.
But I still run the plays though, my plays are still untouchable and they're still solid.
So what, given that, what made PMD end up doing the production on Tell the World My Name instead of EPMD, instead of Eric and Parrish? Why was it mainly just P?
I think that was a problem too. I think that when Parrish tried it, because Parrish is not about that part of it, I think that's where we fell short. But we live and learn. I think if we would have did it, here's my thing. EPMD to me is the only crew that I know that divided itself amongst itself, and then we ran into problems. Like it's the only crew, because I don't see Wu-Tang having 2 squads in Wu-Tang. It's one Wu-Tang, right? He didn't get paid for that hit squad. It kind of left Eric and Redman and them out, and then they had to come back with Def Squad, and it kind of separated them. Any house divided amongst itself will not rise.
That's true. So I was also going to say, what did Dre know that EPMD didn't know?
Okay, so when I started living with Dr. Dre, and I brought Sam Snead, because Sam Snead was with EPMD too. Sam Snead produced the second K solo album, and when me and Sam went over there, because Sam had made contact with him, and then I made contact with him too. We both made contact with Dre. We both headed over there. I started seeing how Dr. Dre works. And it was different from EPMD. He would sample it, but he would play it over and he would get more money. He knew how to control his ambiance way more than EPMD would control the ambiance. EPMD got over great because they was with Russell Simmons, and Russell Simmons was calling plays. They didn't have to do nothing but sit in the pocket. So when Russell Simmons was calling the plays, they were killing it. And then when Russell Simmons got out of the way, they weren't as potent as they used to be. And Dr. Dre, another thing what Dr. Dre had that they didn't have, Dr. Dre had Jimmy Iovine opening doors for him. EPMD didn't have that. They needed that guy that was on their time doing this stuff. They didn't have that.
Okay.
And it makes sense too. Let me tell you why it makes sense. Our world still is separate when it comes to that. If you have, rap started making money when Run DMC invested in Leo Cohen, and Leo Cohen started bringing money in it. Rap started making money when Beastie Boys got introduced to it, and you had a white side putting into a black pot too.
Yeah.
Pretty smart, right? Pretty gifted stuff, right?
It helps.
Well, it not only helps, but same with EPMD. There can't be a brand of EPMD without those people on that side. And you got to remember this too. The pressures that Parrish had on his shoulders were hard because you had somebody shooting him the information from 1960 to 1990, and it's not the same Black America.
You talking about his brother
or his dad, whoever it was shooting him saying, yo, this is what you should do. They're not speaking from 1990. They're speaking from 1960. Yeah. It's not the same Black America.
Right. So
it changes.
That's very true.